Hi, today I'm going to talk to you about Elizabeth Roy's book, Garbageland. It was published by Little Brown and Company and copyrighted in 2005. Her book is an overview of where our garbage goes and what happens to it after it leaves our curb. She does a really good job in the book of breaking down each of the components of garbage and recycling into different chapters. And in the first part of her book, she talks about our trash pickup and landfills. Very little thought is given to our garbage once we put it out at the curb to be picked up by the garbage man. However, our landfills are filling up faster and faster each day with the amount of garbage that we're throwing away. Our landfills get buried with dirt once they reach capacity, and having that cover of dirt over the landfill, it slows down the decomposing process because the air isn't getting to all the material that's underneath, and so it's taking much longer to decompose the items that we are throwing away. Roy also talks about in her book about how garbage is a business, and it's not always necessarily about what is the environmentally friendly way to do things, or even the most efficient way of doing things. It's kind of really pretty much about how much money you can make on the garbage. It's more of a business than I had ever even imagined. She also talked about in her book about how the mob was very heavily involved in the garbage in New York, and how the former mayor Rudy Giuliani had helped I want to say cleaned up the garbage business, but probably just kicked out the mob. She also talks about composting and how we can compost our food waste, yard waste, and other organic material. How we put the garbage in and comes out this rich humus that we can use in our flower beds and gardens. However, composting can be very labor intensive. You got to make sure you put in the right amount of compostable material. You need to turn it to aerate it, and you need to make sure it's got enough moisture. And then you have to decide whether or not you want to add worms. And she talks about that throughout the book. It's kind of a funny little thing. A lot of people are actually arguing that instead of composting, or at least on a larger scale, of doing a food digester instead. And a food digester basically works as it's a big, huge machine. You put in all the food waste. It cooks the food until it's 90% decomposed. Basically, this is a faster and more efficient way of composting food waste than a traditional composting system. She also talks about paper recycling. Paper can be recycled numerous times. However, each time that it is recycled, the fibers get smaller and smaller, and so it degrades the quality until eventually it can only be used for like kitty litter or potting soil. There is very little waste in recycling paper. There's only about a 15% of sludge that comes out when you recycle the paper. The key, however, to recycling paper is not just making sure that you put your extra paper in to be recycled, but also that we're buying products that are made out of recycling paper. She touches on metal recycling. Making products from recycled metal costs 94% less energy than making something from a virgin metal. She also talks about hazardous waste. She questions if the hazardous waste is getting disposed of properly, or if people are just dumping the stuff down the drain. Many people don't always know of where to dispose of their pesticides for their garden or cleaning products they don't use anymore. Usually each community does have a location that you can dispose of this property or properly. However, a lot of people don't know where this is, or the hours of operation, or all the rules and stuff. It can be a hidden secret in a lot of communities. So people just pretty much, they dump it down the drain, and then it ends up into our groundwater. Also, in the past, physicians and pharmacists used to tell people to take their unused medications and flush them down the toilet, which then gets into our groundwater. And it's also consumed by the fish that we eat and other animals. Another huge thing with hazardous waste is electronic waste. It's very toxic. Usually it's shipped overseas to be processed. A lot of air pollutants involved with recycling electronic waste, and there's a huge amount of it because we are constantly upgrading to the newest TV, laptop that runs a little bit faster, new cell phones. It's constant. The other thing she talks about, and I think she called this chapter the demon resin, plastic recycling. Huge thing here. 11% of the plastic is actually from water bottles. So think about that the next time you go to get a water bottle from the Quick Trip or something. Bring a bottle to put some water in. Also, the recycling symbol that is on a lot of plastics doesn't always necessarily mean that it's recyclable. The plastic companies use that same symbol for other things that doesn't mean it's recyclable. So it can be confusing for consumers. There is a high energy it's energy intensive to recycle plastic. And plastic bags are a huge culprit. And they are very toxic to make and dispose of. Some countries, such as Ireland, have actually implemented a 15 cents per plastic bag charge to customers if they use plastic bags to kind of help promote not using them. The next thing she talks about is sewage and the large amount of water that's used to flush our sewage down the drain. There are companies that do use this sewage to make biosolids that they use for compost. And there are some individuals that are actually disconnecting themselves from the sewer line, and they are using what they call a sawdust toilet, where it's basically a bucket of sawdust and you defecate in there, and you can use it to compost. I don't think I could quite go that far. But overall, in her book, she talks that, recycling is good and we want to do that and stuff, but the biggest culprit to the mounds and mounds of garbage is consumerism. We are constantly buying more and more stuff, and this stuff is ending up in our landfills. She used the example of Christmas time, just with all the catalogs and everything you got to buy. And a lot of this stuff ends up in the garbage. Last year's present of the doll is now in the garbage because we now got a better doll or a newer doll. Things aren't made to last anymore, so a lot of this stuff is, the lifespan of it is very short, and so it ends up in our garbage. The catalogs that we get, some of them aren't recyclable, and so it's just piling up. She also uses about the plastic that's used for our credit cards are not easily disposed of as well. There are some communities in our nation that are striving towards zero waste. Roy uses the example of San Francisco. They're working towards zero waste, and they've got a great recycling program going on. They have 3 bins that they put out. One is for garbage. One is for recycling materials, your plastics, glass, papers, stuff. And the other is for food waste. So you could put in your potato peelings and the leftover potatoes, and the moldy loaf of bread could go in there and get composted. Washington is also another example she uses that is striving towards zero waste. However, Roy questions in her book whether or not zero waste is truly achievable. Basically, my critique of the book is it's an excellent book, a must-read book. It'll definitely change the way you look at garbage, and the next time you go to your garbage bin to throw something away, you might be a little more conscious. One of the examples she uses in her conclusion in the book is that little receipt. And I do it all the time, and now I'm catching myself. Doesn't need to go in the garbage. It's recyclable. It's paper. So those little things. Her book is very easy to read. The flow of it is very smooth. She uses a lot of stories, some little funny things in there from her personal life. I can picture her sitting in her kitchen with her daughter's little toboggan sled measuring out her garbage. So you can really kind of envision each person she's talking to when she's talking to the runners of the plants, the managers and CEOs. They kind of really come to life. So it's an easy to read, fast read book. However, though, it's not just fluff. She uses a lot of statistics in there to back up her claims. A lot of the things that she talks about and the average weight of garbage an American family uses and stuff, it really supports all of her statements, and it gives you a wider and more well-rounded idea of what's really going on. Instead of just saying a lot, there's a number attached to that. Also, she kind of, it leads into one of her other books that she's got called Bottlemania, and explores the world of plastic bottles. So it's definitely a book that I have already purchased, but I purchased it electronically, so paper was not used, and they don't have to ship it out to my house with trucks. However, though, my tablet will die someday, and it'll need to be recycled, and I feel for the people in that country that have to breathe in the hazardous air pollutants from my tablet. So overall, very good book. Definitely pick it up. I know you will never look at garbage the same way again. Thank you.